It's July 1st, and if you rely on public transportation to get in and around Boston, you already know what that means. Fare hikes have kicked in, or as they're being called by many riders, unfair hikes.
To charge people more for it when that system becomes increasingly unreliable, it is, as the council said, offensive.
We need to stand together and continue to put pressure on the state.
Crowds gathered at stations across the city and beyond today and over the weekend to protest fares that have gone up 15 cents per ride on the T and as much as 75 cents on the commuter rail. And, of course, those increases come against the backdrop of 2 derailments last month, which caused some injuries, massive delays and mechanical damage on the red and green lines, on top of the usual headaches. So while many riders and some officials, like Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, pushed for those fare hikes to be delayed, MBTA officials marched on with their plan, pointing toward the investments they're making to ensure more reliable service, including, quote, a record $8 billion to deliver new trains, buses, tracks, signals, power systems, and maintenance facilities. But for those still dealing with delays, that is little consolation.
It makes everybody late, but they want to charge us more.
I'm joined now by Boston City Councilor Michelle Wu, who spearheaded today's protest, as well as a Boston Tea Party rally over the weekend. Get it? We're also joined by Chris Dempsey, Director of Transportation for Massachusetts, a coalition of organizations aiming to improve transportation across the state. Guys, thanks for being here. I feel like I talked to you just a few days ago, which we did. Michelle Wu, as you were out and about over the weekend and today, what did you hear from the Tea riders you talked to?
It was remarkably consistent. So today I got on at Ashmont on the Red Line, came up at JFK UMass, got back in, and then rode all the way to Park Street. Rider after rider was telling me it's ridiculous. Service is slow. Riders have nicknamed different stations where there's a Savin Hill stall. Every time it pulls into Savin Hill, there's a 10-minute at least wait. And it was stop after stop, a few minutes here, a few minutes there. Commute times doubled, tripled, and now paying more.
All of which must have been very cathartic for these people to be able to say. But what is the goal here, ultimately, with the unfair hikes protest? What do you want the end to be that you've achieved?
Yeah, today was about a coalition of 300 volunteers, more than 60 elected officials and candidates at 75 stations all across the region, from Boston metro area out to Worcester. Not just protesting, but really engaging people and trying to dig in and push for something more. The conversations changed one-on-one with riders when I talked about what they could do to get involved. So not just, there's this sense that they don't care about us, they're not going to change it, this keeps happening. But when you clarify who the they is, that it's 5 people appointed by Governor Baker with no direct voice for riders, for cities, that's something we could change, and we have to in the next year before that structure expires.
Chris Dempsey, Michelle talked about governance there, the T-Control Board. If the Baker administration came to you and said, all right, Chris, we're in over our depth, or out of our depth, in over our heads, we want you to be our T-czar, take this and run with it, what are the, say, top 3 items on your to-do list in that absurd scenario?
So there's a lot to work with there, Adam, because we've got a lot of problems. One thing I would say is let's focus on buses. Buses are actually the poorest performing service of any part of the MBTA. Their own standard is that if they're on time 75% of the time, they call it success. And they're normally in the high 60s or low 70s. So more bus lanes to get buses moving faster, just more buses in general, and then things you've heard me talk about like congestion pricing, where we're getting buses moving faster on major highways so that they can provide more service.
Because less people are coming into the city at peak hours, right?
Correct, and those buses will move faster so they're more attractive to people who are regional commuters.
I don't want to minimize either of the things that you mentioned, which seem like smart policy proposals, but what about with the trains themselves, whether it's commuter rail or the subway in the inner core? What are changes that you think need to be made there?
I think it's just more investment. It's getting the new cars that are now due. They were due something like 8 or 9 months ago, continued to be delayed, getting them running and actually on the tracks. The Red Line car that derailed in Ashmont or JFK 2 weeks ago was first put on the rails in 1969, the same year that we put a man on the moon. Same train running today. So getting those done. I mean, they're in the shop now. They're being created in the factory in Springfield. We need to get those actually working.
Given how critical you've both been of the status quo, I am wondering if there is anything that you do give the Baker administration credit for. As you know, the governor and his surrogates frequently point out that he's spending $8 billion in a span of 5 years compared to, I think, $3 billion in the 5 years before he took office. Does he deserve credit, for example, for that?
Yeah, I would say the appointment of the FMCB has been the right choice, and I was a critic
Fiscal
of that
Management
decision.
Control Board.
Correct. So it is the 5 people, and Michelle's raising a very good point about how do we make sure that's representative of the entire city and the entire region. But those are 5 volunteers. They are not paid. They're putting their own time in, and by and large, they've made some good decisions and advanced the T from a governance perspective.
Do you agree with that, Michelle?
I think it's important to recognize that we have seen progress in just a short span, that the governor now has said the T could use more money, and that is a big change from before. So both in how the fare hikes have been rolled out, I want to remind everyone that when they were first proposed by the T back in February or earlier in this year, it was an across-the-board hike across every service, and it was only after a lot of public pressure that the bus fares were exempted from that increase, seniors and youth as well. So there's been a little bit of response. There's now been more, I think the governor said earlier today that there's a lack of trust, and the T and the leadership needs to earn that back. We just need to see that earned back faster and more boldly.
Marty Walsh, the mayor of Boston, also has come out as, I guess, more critical than he used to be, is how I would characterize it. After you said that the hike should be frozen, he came out and agreed, saying, we shouldn't hike fares until the red line is fixed. He also said, maybe echoing you again, that Boston should have a dedicated seat on the Fiscal Management Control Board. Was that an echo of a proposal you'd made? Am I right? I just want you to fact check.
I think everybody's been saying things like that, and what's important is that we need every single elected official, anyone who has a platform, to push for these tangible changes.
Let's take a look at Walsh talking about the T and changes he wants to have made. Come right back.
No, there's absolutely no checks and balances right now. Certainly with the challenges that we face with the growing city in Boston, single largest payer into the T, there's a lot of reasons why we should have a seat on the board.
So I'm curious, as someone who works with the mayor in the city council, how would you grade him on this issue? He's been outspoken in the last couple of weeks, but how do you size up his leadership on this?
I think it's important that everyone who has a platform is representative of the riders, and we can talk about who's sitting in what seats and how individuals are doing, but at the end of the day, are we channeling the frustrations and the solutions that riders want to see? I think everyone, all of us, myself included, always need to be held accountable on that. I think the other big piece that the city of Boston should be moving faster on is around implementation of dedicated bus lanes. It is the single fastest, most effective, and also the number one focus when it comes to equity should be on prioritizing our bus lanes and moving riders who are stuck in buses in traffic a lot faster and more reliably.
Naturally, I have to ask you a question that I've been wondering, and a lot of other people are wondering. Are you thinking about running for mayor in 2021?
I am running for re-election right now, and I love my job. I'm very excited that in 2019, the City of Boston has the opportunity really to reshape the City Council and city government. There are several open seats. Now 15 candidates running for City Council at large and 3 open district seats. This is going to be the year that we need to see everyone engage with city government and the level that they can actually have a tangible impact on their future.
I think it would be accurate, and this is not complimentary nor pejorative, but to call that a Warren-esque answer, because it sort of reminds me of what now presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren said when she was asked if she was going to seek the presidency. Are you even thinking about making mayoral bid? And I ask because I think you've been so visible on this issue, about which you clearly care deeply and are very well informed. But a lot of us who watch politics know that in addition to advocating for transportation, this is potentially a politically advantageous campaign to be leading. So are you pondering it, mulling it over?
I will leave it to you all pundits to decide what is politically advantageous and not. I have been always ready to propose things that I believe best reflect the needs and the issues that residents are facing when it's popular and when it's unpopular. Not too long ago, we were sitting here and I was talking about people being very upset over proposals around parking and how to manage that system better.
That was not a politically advantageous proposal. Okay, just for the record, you didn't say no. I just want to note that you didn't say no. Chris Dempsey, let me close with you. Sure. A more policy-oriented, high-minded question to go out on. There's been a lot of talk from Bob DeLeo, who's been thought of as opposed to increasing taxes to fund improvements to the system. He now seems to be open to the idea. It's talking about the need for a comprehensive transportation plan to be hammered out this fall, a sustainable year-to-year annual revenue source. How optimistic are you about that?
I'm optimistic. I've met with the speaker on this issue, and he seems very engaged in it. I think the Senate president is also very aware of our transportation challenges. And actually, that's why I think what Michelle has been doing on this is so important. Our fundamental problems in transportation are not engineering problems, they're political problems. Decisions about how do we raise money, how do we invest that money, and how do we create a governance system with both roads and rails that works better for everyone that's using the system. So what she's doing is organizing people so that we can have a more united voice, whether you're a transit rider or a driver who wants less congested roads, so that this fall and into next year, people are saying we demand change and we're ready to make some tough choices.
Chris Dempsey, Michelle Wu, thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having me.